recording, so I think we can go ahead and get started here. So right now my computer goes through phases where it gets really hot and the fan spins out of control. So I'm just warning you now that if you lose me, it's because my computer crashed.
So Todd was supposed to be facilitating for this meeting, so I don't really know what he had planned. Has anybody had contact with him to know what direction he was intending? Or we just
I send him a text right now. No, I haven't heard anything or seen an agenda.
So I can just give you a quick little update from where things stand from things that we've been working on. So during the very first meeting, we talked a little bit about producing some videos. And that's something that our office has been wanting to do for quite a long time now. And so it was really good to have Josh Slotnick involved and to become an advocate for that process and lead us down the road to what I'm going to tell you about right now, and that is we've started up the process of requests for proposal to allow a transparent process for contractors to. So what we were thinking is they can present their ideas to us, and one thing we felt would be a nice way to have them present abbreviated packages of information and more in line with what we're hoping to get from them. Since they would be producing videos for us, we were hoping that they would be able to produce videos or examples of videos that they had been working on as kind of a portfolio or resume combo that they could present, so that we can filter through those submissions and come up with the best possible team to work on these videos for us. And those whatever proposals they submit, the nice thing about that too is it's a public process. So the public would be able to view those proposals if they would so choose to. They would be posted on the county auditor's website. And that's just another layer of transparency that I think is only beneficial to us right now. So that's something that we're working on. And I wish that Commissioner Slotnick was here so that I could just kind of thank him for championing that and being an advocate for that, because we really wanted to do that for a long time. But I feel like the quality of material we're going to be able to put out there with a professional video production crew is going to be leagues ahead of anything that we could get. And I don't know if everyone had a chance to view the videos that Christina Barsky sent from Yavapai County. Was that correct? Or Maricopa County?
The ballot one is from Maricopa.
The ballot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. So those are great. And I mean, things like that, that's right up our alley there. That's what I'm hoping that we can come out with some material that's engaging and entertaining like that. The other thing is, as I mentioned at the beginning, we had an election and on Tuesday, we're still recovering from that, so to speak. We're putting together Canvas documents, etc. But I haven't forgotten about building some remote documents for us to collaborate remotely on. So that was one of the things that when I last spoke to Todd, we had talked about was parsing the list of contacts that we had come up with over the course of the last couple of meetings, down to the most fruitful, so to speak. I mean, what would be the best avenue to explore? What's going to have the most return for us? And so I'm leaving that up to you guys, because I want to see what kind of things that, what you guys come up with to show to us, and to what kind of recommendations you would have and the reasoning behind those recommendations. So I don't know, did everyone get those the links to those documents where we had the lists of the community, the connections we were hoping to build in the community.
I believe I did. This is
Okay.
Susan.
So I think everyone, I should have gotten those. I sent those out. But if you didn't get the links to the spreadsheets or the list of the community organizations, just let me know. I can shoot that out to you. But I'm working on a more collaborative version of that document that we can share in together. Just haven't gotten quite there yet. I've been a little busy here.
Nathan, would you do me a favor? I'm looking through my email right now, and I am not seeing it. Would you please resend that to us?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I apologize.
No problem.
So Nathan, I don't recall on that list, did you categorize the suggestions that we had made?
I did.
Okay.
So I sifted the list into categories, and well, here, I'll find it for you and get it sent out. And hey, don't let my search for the documents stop you from conversing or taking the meeting in whatever direction you want to go. It's your meeting, not mine.
Well, I'm not sure we really know what direction to take it in. I mean, I think we kind of remember the previous meeting that we had, but without an agenda, I'm not sure how we can do that. I did send a text to Todd, have not gotten a response back, so I'm not sure what to say about that.
Since there is no agenda, can I just jump in with a observation? On the last election that was just held, it was really difficult to find information about the candidates, about the people, statements on, you know, where their positions were as far as the various offices that they were running for, positions they were running for. Is there a way that elections staying apolitical could at least post a website address or something for people who are running so it's easier to find information?
So I'll tell you, in general, we're not going to put out any kind of document. What we do have on the website, on the main website, if you go to missoulavotes.com, there's one of the menus on the site is called Information for Candidates, which is not going to be what the public is looking for, obviously. Right. So if you go to Information for Candidates, when the candidates file, they're able to provide us with their information, including their address, email, contact, and then a website if they have one.
Oh, okay.
So in general, these races that were on the ballot,
small
fire district directors and school trustees and, you know, schools that are running levies. The schools might have information about their levies on their websites, but we're not going to host that. But when a candidate links that or inserts their website onto their oath of candidacy, we put that on that spreadsheet that's online. It's publicly available. But like I said, my caveat at the beginning is it's all listed under Information for Candidates, and I'm sure that most of the public is not going to be going there to look for it. So I see where you're going though. The public wants the information about the candidates, but we're just not going to put it out there. Our office is not going to.
But if it's posted under the candidate information, wouldn't it make sense to have it be something that's a bit more obvious to the voter, easier to find for the voter if it's posted?
It's a possibility because we do link it there. I mean, they are able to access it from that spreadsheet. But I feel like we're mainly putting it there for, I mean, it is an for informational purposes only. I mean, it's hard to say.
Okay.
I mean, that's something that we've always kind of shied away from. Anything that involves linking to candidates' campaigns or anything that could be considered even remotely partisan, we're not going to be. But I see what you're saying, because we're already sharing that information in kind of a side corridor of our website anyway. But not every candidate provides that.
So I get what you're saying, Nathan, and I think it's a tricky can of worms, because even if we make it entirely voluntary, right, and one candidate provides information and another doesn't, it looks like a disparity if you don't know what the policy is, right? So it makes sense why we don't do that in an obvious way. But here's what I am wondering. Is there an FAQ section on our website that we could provide that answer? And that people, if they're looking at the FAQs, they can get that information. We don't have to necessarily move the information or make it more obvious. But I think that there's a way that we can give people a trail of crumbs, so to speak.
Right, that if a candidate has provided this information, it can be located here.
Right, and here's
because
where
as it stands,
it's up to you to go find it.
Right, because it's kind of sequestered there in its own little realm, because the candidate has provided it to us, and we're only sharing it in full disclosure. We're not sharing it, as in advocacy in any way.
Because I keep remembering in the survey that one of the things people were looking for was an informational brochure or something where they could, a centralized place for information about issues, candidates, that kind of thing.
Oh, certainly.
But I also, so many of the people that do gather all that information and questionnaires are very, they're different organizations that I would say are biased. And even just the campaign websites, a lot of those people don't provide, or most ones I've seen in Montana don't provide any sort of candidate viewpoints. It's mostly used for recruitment of volunteers, donations, and stuff like that. Even the candidates are almost like leery of bullet pointing their stances on stuff. So maybe if we could reach out more to the candidates and really have them, people want to know how you stand on this or this, and utilize, and not everyone even has a website. So it's tricky.
I mean, I think, frankly, when it comes to those local races like city council, county commission, and even like the legislative races, I think that even though the quality of reporting may not always be the best, those candidate interviews that they do is probably one of the best ways to glean information. 'Cause I hear what you're saying, Amber. Candidate websites are not about providing, just straight up information on voting records. That's not what they're interested in doing. And scorecards, as I think we all know, can be really very misleading, right? And it's hard to know what information to look to. So I think that those interviews that the Missoulian does a couple weeks prior to the election is probably one of the best resources. And even those can be slanted.
So I just sent out those documents, so hopefully you should have just gotten them all.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, traditionally, the candidate files with us, we put their name on the ballot, and that's kind of the end of that contract.
Well, I was thinking about like a candidate statement, but then it gets tricky, because I think there would need to be parameters put on it saying you cannot mention any opposing candidate in your statement and that kind of thing.
Tough.
I remember back in California when we would get a voter pamphlet with each election, and they would have pro and con on issues, and then the candidates would also put a statement in on what their belief is related to the position they were running for. And it was useful, even though it was kind of hype.
That's interesting. I mean, I feel like the idea of a informational pamphlet, I like the idea, but I also know that when I send out the request for a candidate's bio, that I'm not always going to get a response. And then if I'm publishing the response of one candidate and not another, the public perception could be, well, I only like this candidate, and that's why I blackballed the other guy. I mean, it's a tricky one, and I feel like Susan, if you want to make that pamphlet, I'm just kidding. as a neutral third party, I'm going to support you on that 100%. But I just think that it's never going to come from our office. I mean, I know the Secretary of State's guidebook about informational pamphlet about the ballot initiatives, et cetera, is unfortunately going to have to suffice for now.
Well, I wasn't thinking of any print pamphlet. I think that gets too expensive. But just even online information. But trying to keep it totally generic, totally level playing field for all candidates is it can be a slippery slope.
It's tough. Yeah, and I mean,
but
oh, sorry, Amber, go ahead.
As committee members, we would be able to share to our own personal, like, social media pages and stuff and say, I found these different websites of different compilations of stuff. These might be your best resource. Because I know during elections and stuff, people, I post enough political stuff that people ask me questions on, like, election day and different stuff of that, of where they're registered or where they go. So even just using our own personal resources, at least we could utilize those contacts.
Yeah, I mean, because there is no question that it is one of the most frequently requested items. A voter guide, some kind of informational packet. I mean, they come to me and ask me, but I'm even loath to present people with, well, go ahead and look on the Missoulian, because people have a perception of bias from our local media outlets. If I say go to KPAX and they say, why would you send me there? You must want me to think or vote this way. It's just a can of worms is the best way to describe it, Denver. It's a risky road to go down. That's my personal take on it.
Yeah, I don't like it, but I think you're right, and I think it opens the elections office to more criticism and attack than I think we really want to court at this point.
Maybe an approach would be, instead of information about specifics, is information about how to find information.
That's not a bad idea.
I remember when we were, I used to coordinate a technology conference up in Alaska, and it was back in the mid-90s when the internet was just coming into being for the public. And we had one class that was extremely popular, and it was how to research on the internet. And maybe something like that would be more appropriate and totally apolitical, no candidates, no issues mentioned. It's just how to research on the internet.
I like that. That's a much easier way to remain neutral, for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Nathan, I don't know if you saw my text.
I did. Let's try this again.
Yeah.
Did everybody else get the attachments?
I did.
So speaking of this and trouble with sending attachments, what's funny is a candidate actually came in and provided us with his website that is not up and running yet. And when we put it on his page and we test the links to make sure that they work, and the county has internally blocked that address, so we're unable to test it. Just a kind of funny aside.
Thank you, Nathan. I got it.
So maybe we should just set up a plan, or what's our approach going to be on going through these different groups and identifying who we want to pursue.
Susan, feel free to correct my memory, but I kind of thought we did that last time. I thought we brainstormed a list of groups and then assigned. I see specific EAC members assigned to specific groups. Like Amber is assigned to the Missoula Business Women's Network and Missoula Young Professionals.
I think that's groups they belong to.
Oh, I see. Okay.
We
So
kind of just did.
I think what would be a good idea would be to take the list and just kind of scrutinize it and determine which ones are going to be the most productive, and possibly, spreading them amongst each other to establish a list of contacts to try to determine the most fruitful contact within the organization.
Yeah, because really on this one sheet with the groups, where it says at the bottom what we belong to, we could just add another tab and each, choose which one we think would be the best contact for that group. I'm looking at some of them, like Montana Women Vote. They're so active, I don't know. And on top of stuff, maybe we could collaborate, but we wouldn't really need to be educating them on a lot, So our time would maybe be better spent on a different group that's kind of clueless. So I don't know how we want to go through it, but.
Well,
So maybe that's a way to approach it, is to identify they're a politically active group, or they're just more of a civic group, like Missoula Quilters Guild. I keep going back to them. It's a large group of women. There might be some election judge potentials in there, but they probably just vote, and that's it. Not politically active, possibly.
Whew, my computer's about to take off, you guys, so I don't know what to do. I might mute it there.
So are we looking at these groups to do presentations to, or just fishing for their interest, or what are we going to do?
I have the same question, what is the outreach purpose? Because I think that'll determine who we are talking to, right? Is it like you should vote, or is it like we need election judges, or is it something else?
That's a great question. So, I mean, I can only speak to kind of what I had in mind and the conversations I had with Bradley. The purpose of our outreach committee is to be able to identify groups and individuals within the Missoula community that that we can educate, not about why they should vote, but about how effective the Missoula Elections Office is and how accurate the elections are. There is a lot of partisan speculation out there that I think has damaged people's trust in their democracy and in the accuracy. And part of the goal is to be able to develop allies within the community that we can get information to them about the accuracy of elections in Missoula, the safeguards that we have in place, what those processes look like, the tutorial videos that Nathan talked about, and hopefully they will A, share those within their circles, and B, we're building relationships, and when there are attacks on the elections office, we have people that are not in these political circles but can step up and say, no, elections are very secure, very accurate. Here's how it works. We're trying to cultivate spokespeople and advocates for the Missoula Elections Office. That's the primary thrust
Okay.
of what we had in mind.
I also kind of viewed it as people that we on the committee could almost be like PR for the elections office to those committees. So like Missoula Businesswomen's, they meet once a month for their whole, they have one big general meeting. So, you know, a few months out of the election, we would basically be spreading all that information that even that basic stuff of this is how you figure out where you go to vote. This is how it works the day of. This is what you can do beforehand. You know, all those little questions that we could, because a lot of these communities will, you know, groups will let you get up and give a 5-10 minute presentation even, and then you could just hang out and say, like MBN, I would just say, and I'm going to hang out for, you know, 30 minutes after the meeting if anyone has any questions. Because I found, especially politically, unless it's a really generic question, people want to ask in a group, but they'd feel comfortable later asking. So, and then also the same, like using them as a network opportunity as well, because maybe we would find people that want to volunteer, just haven't had the time before or hadn't really. There's a lot of people I think that care about the process, but are intimidated to get involved, and they don't want to alienate any clients or friends or family. And so I think showing them that there's other ways to be a part of the process without blatantly, like, publicly making who you're voting for or, you know, showing a bias would be helpful. And then hoping that they continue to it just keeps networking, branching out, utilizing their contacts for our image, and then just spreading that information. Because every election day I've worked, it's just crazy the amount of people that pull up and are like, where do I go? What do I do? Is this the right envelope? Like, it just seems to be basic questions that you're like, we've been putting this out there. We've been putting this out there. Somehow you missed it.
Right. But
So,
to your point, Amber, and I'm really glad you said that, because you're right. Like part of you know, building that relationships is just having presence and going to people. But in order to do that, we also have to have the resources. Like, we've got to have the handouts and the PowerPoint presentations to be able, in a very simple and effective way, to present the information. So before we get too far along in the line of, like, actually making phone calls and trying to schedule presentations, do we have the materials that we need in order to do that?
You know,
I think that's a question for Nathan.
I was at a Lions Club meeting, and Jack Schmidt was a member of the same Lions Club, and Jack and I got to talking about the folks at the meeting about the election process, because I just am amazed at the checks and balances on the balloting process. And as Jack and I talked to all these people about the pathway of a ballot, they were really amazed at the process that happens. They had no idea of the way things are guarded and protected and ensured, integrity ensured. And I think that's the kind of thing that I would like to see us getting out and educating these people on what's going on. And it would be non-political. It wouldn't be anything that somebody could hang their hat on and say, you know, oh, you're trying to be a specific color or whatever. It would just be informational.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great idea, Susan.
Yeah, Denver, there are materials, of course, any materials that we do have. I mean, some of this is kind of blurring the lines with the recruitment, or the focus of the recruitment subcommittee, because we are kind of discussing about bringing people in to assist with the process to some degree here also. But and we have materials pretty well established for that. Some of these materials, when it comes to outreach and educating the public about the the mission and the purpose of the elections office and the processes. And some of these materials we are going to have to build, we're going to have to create, which includes some of the videos, or like you were saying, pamphlets, handouts, some kind of thing. But to me, I think we definitely want to keep it as simple as possible. We don't want to make it a burdensome, you've got to go out on your traveling salesman tour and try to sell the elections process to the whole community. So it kind of brings me back to something, and I'll just mention real quickly that Christina had to leave for other business. But it brings me back to something she had mentioned before, which is determining the focus of our outreach. Are we looking for? What are we looking to gain? What are we really shooting for here? Are we looking for specific groups? Are we just trying to address the whole community? Are we trying to reach, directly appeal to underserved communities? What is the most valuable use of our time? And I think some of the focus that we kind of came to during the last discussion was reaching out toward underserved communities. And I feel like that probably is one of the best uses of our time. And I don't know what large scale production we would actually put on to reach underserved communities. And that's why I feel like some of these groups are going to have. So one of the suggestions that we had, one of the ideas that we had was partnering up with, and this is probably going to be one of the most fruitful groups to work with, would be, say, the food bank. If we're giving just a small amount of information to the food bank for them to potentially give out a 1-second spiel on the mission of the elections office, or there's an election coming up, how would you like to register to vote? I think something that can briefly be delivered when someone comes to pick up some food, or, I feel like that was a pretty good one. That's just me, spitballing back kind of things that I've heard from the past meetings. I feel that we do kind of need to determine the main focus, though. That's where I'm going to turn it back to you again.
So I think in addition to underserved, there has to be uninformed groups also. And between those two, that could maybe be the initial focus. And as far as groups that have a more political bent, we could get them involved possibly in the process of contacting and educating the uninformed and underserved. Can voter registrations be set up at the food bank?
I mean, that's a possibility, but I don't know if we're going to go so far as to actually conduct registration there. But we could have the forms available so that they could be then collected and submitted, or we could collect them and process them. Mm-hmm.
So in general, I agree. I think that focusing on underserved communities is would be a good focus. And you make a fine point, Nathan. If we can't reach the entire community at one time, but maybe starting with underserved communities would be a good place to kind of narrow our focus. I would suggest that we put together, Nathan, you said there's a number of resources available. Could you send out like maybe the top 5 resources, 3 or 5 resources that you feel like would be good for public consumption? And then as individuals on our outreach committee, over the next week or 2 weeks, we review those, take a look at what we've got, provide feedback on, yes, I think this is great. No, I think we need to tweak this, or if we need something else entirely. And then we reconvene and also narrow down our groups to try and focus on underserved populations. Does that seem like a fair way to proceed, guys?
Yeah. I think it gives us some direction, and I think we need it.
Well, and again, I think that there probably was an agenda that would give us more focus for this meeting, and I apologize for that just disorganization. I'm going to follow up with Todd after we get off the call and see what happened to him. But I think that for right now, I want to be conscious of everyone's time, and I feel like that's kind of where this conversation is going. And I don't think we can really do anything until we've kind of done those things. I don't want to be dogmatic about this, and if folks have other ideas, please share them. But that's kind of how I see us proceeding from here.
Yeah. I also think, like, when I'm not saying it so much as in her question in the chat of curious about inviting people into the election office, to build trust versus going out and giving educational presentations. I feel like I'm not giving a whole presentation. It's more like just I'm like, these are the election dates. This is really, there's a lot of information on the Missoula Votes website that people just don't know where is there, or they click there and then it's too much info almost. So they're like, yeah. So just showing how much information is even there, and that resource is already at their fingertips is, just little stuff like that, I think, as well. But when we say underserved, I think also that it'd be worth mentioning also that underserved, and I don't want to say with a focus on, but underserved, but also to include the BIPOC community in Missoula. Since that is, I know it's kind of like a buzzword right now in a lot of different parts of our culture, but yeah, I think it would benefit us a lot to include that term too in our focus statement or whatever.
And I think there's another segment of the population who are not going to go and try to find information on Missoula Votes or anything like that. They're just going to blindly move forward and say, oh, well, election day is coming up, and they aren't going to raise the question for themselves. And I think that's another part of what we can do, is start them questioning and inciting them to go and investigate and learn and be involved.
When I think about underserved populations, maybe we need to kind of break that down, define what we mean. I'm thinking more of groups that the kind of normal political entities, organizations might not reach out to, or there may be less activity in their neighborhoods. So like I'm thinking about poor families, poor workers. I'm thinking about our Native American population. I'm also thinking about our seniors. Certainly the LGBT and BIPOC community. Those are the groups I'm thinking of, like as we talk about underserved.
Yeah, and I think that's why the Missoula Food Bank would be such a good resource for so much of that population already utilizes that nonprofit.
Yes, and I feel like the food bank would be a great resource because I feel like they would be willing to work with us and build a relationship.
So, and they have a position called the community organizer through, I can't remember, but it's like the Interfaith Collaborative or whatever. And so they have people at different nonprofits, and I know All Nations is hiring for the same position. And yeah, that's what they want to do, is have those community organizers kind of, rile up the troops and get them excited about that kind of stuff. So they would be good people to partner with. I think we have a meeting, or I was just invited to something today, so I'll look it up and let you guys know, but I know that they always want other people from the community to sit in on these meetings when in regards to all the community organizers. So I'll get more information, because it was a really long email and I skimmed it, so I'll read through it for you guys and get the pertinent information out.
Sounds good.
Well, Amber, I think you should maybe facilitate our next meeting.
Second that motion.
Yeah.
Now that my family, I just got off quarantine on the 29th. My son, my youngest son was hit by a car outside his school a few weeks ago.
Oh my God.
And it turned out, yeah, he's perfectly fine, scratches, bruises, but while he was in the hospital, he tested positive for COVID.
Oh,
And then so my husband and our other son tested positive. I had it last fall and I'm already vaccinated, but because I wouldn't isolate away from them, I had to still be under quarantine. So yeah.
Well,
So I'm
Is that
back finally in my
okay now?
office after like a month, and I'm back in the world. And so I think I'm all like, yeah, riled up and excited again.
I'm definitely feeling that spring fever. I am so tired of being cooped up in my house. I am ready to get out and re-engage again.
Yeah.
I think most people are.
Yeah.
I've
I'll
heard
bring
it
up
referred-
one last thing here. I just would like to say, how would we like to work going forward in scheduling these meetings? I think I'm going to turn it over to you guys to handle that part of it, because it's kind of difficult for me to herd the cats, so to speak.
Did the my time
fair.
thing didn't pan out?
So what happened was you established that meeting, and I was doing everything I could to try to make sure that we could get Commissioner Slotnick into the meeting with us.
Uh-huh.
So the one time that he was going to be able to attend just didn't quite work out, apparently. So we ended up with this night, and you know, most of us are here.
Yeah.
I don't know if 5 o'clock, because for me, 4 o'clock would work better. But I don't know if everyone else's like work schedules, because I can kind of schedule my work around this. It just seems to be like anything, right? Like other stuff just seems to pop up all the time. So.
Well,
I don't
I'm
know
a
if
big fan of doing this during the workday, and my schedule can be flexible with planning in advance as well.
I'm totally flexible. So any time works for me.
Why don't we go to our calendars and see if we can pick a date in maybe 2-3 weeks. I am going to be gone out of state the week of the 17th. But maybe that last week in May, that would give us basically 3 weeks between now and then. And then we've got another actual EAC meeting. I think coming up next week on the 11th, don't we?
That's the research, or no, research is on the 17th.
So a meeting of the whole EAC doesn't happen until July 13th. But there is the research subcommittee on 11th at 4 o'clock.
The 11th to the 17th.
11th. And then the 11th is the recruitment subcommittee meets on the 11th at 4 o'clock. The research subcommittee meets at 5 on the 17th. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Thank you.
So yeah, that week of like the 24th through the 28th, that Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, any of those days would work for me.
You talking in May or in June?
In May.
Okay.
In 3 weeks.
For this outreach, yeah.
I think I can make any of those days work. Thursday looks like the lightest day as my schedule reflects right now.
Thursday would work fine for me also.
27?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
At 4 p.m., guys?
Do we have Amber? Are you down for facilitating that one?
Sure.
Perfect.
Thank you, Amber.
Thanks,
Thank
Em.
you. Yeah, so maybe in the meantime, take a look through the documents that I mailed out and just kind of figure out how to parse that to best meet the goal of hitting some of these communities that we discussed. I think that would be probably the most beneficial road. And then I'll take a look to see what kind of the top 5 resources, as you described it, Denver, that would be for public consumption that we could put out, and also to make it palatable, and also, you know, not to make these into long drawn out presentations, but just a quick couple second interaction you can have with someone, you know, that can be expanded to a couple minutes as necessary, but that way you're not putting you out on the road show.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. If between now and our next subcommittee meeting, if we can figure out what the toolkit looks like and drill down on the groups that we really want to focus on it, at least for first, I feel like that would be progress for us.
Sure, and if you have any ideas, of materials that you think that aren't included in what I've shown you, or that we don't have available, we can work on building some of those things. I'm so excited for those videos. That's the one thing I'm really looking forward to, because be able to give digestible versions of this process. This process is huge, and people. So, like I always say, elections happen by magic, but that comes with a downfall, because people get their ballot, they vote. That's it. That's the election. It's easy, and anybody could do that, right? But there is so much more going on here. Elections are not easy, and I mean, running an election is not. There's a lot more to it, and I want people to see those steps. And I'm really looking forward to being able to present them to them in a, like the schoolhouse rock idea. I love that. That's what I want. Anyway, that's just me. I think we're probably close to the end here, so I'm gonna let you guys finish up with anything you have.
I think we've got our marching orders. Do you guys have anything else?
No,
Nope. I think this was productive.
I do
I
too.
think so too. I think we got some clear next steps, and everyone knows what we're doing, right? I will follow up with Todd and figure out what happened, and I will talk to you guys in 3 weeks.
Sounds
All
good.
right.
Everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good weekend, you guys.
Take care.
Nathan.
Yes, you too.
Yes.
Sometime back, I talked to you and I told you I have a Pelican case that I used to have a projector in, and I have absolutely no need for it. But it's a heavy duty case when you guys are doing satellite places and you have delicate equipment you need to pack. It's on rollers. It has, you know, it's heavy duty. I've actually put it on an airplane and flew stuff around. So
Well, bring it by. I'll take a look at it. That sounds useful.
Okay, and it still has the projector in it, and it's an old projector that has 16 shades of magenta. It's not color. There's probably nothing that you have that it would hook up to, I'm sure.
Where's your sepia tone projector? I want to take it back to the 1800s, you know?
Yeah, really. Yeah, it's just like that.